Vincent Hayes pushed open the glass doors of his downtown penthouse just as the first light touched the Chicago skyline. The city stretched below him like a sleeping giant. Unaware of the man who had spent another sleepless night negotiating deals that would never fill the emptiness inside. His tie hung loose, his jacket draped over one arm, and exhaustion pressed. Against his temples like a familiar companion, the penthouse greeted him with its usual sterile perfection. Everything in its place, nothing out of order, just the way he had designed it. Clean lines, minimal furniture, and enough space to forget you were sharing the world with 7 billion other souls. This was his kingdom, built from code and innovation, where his artificial intelligence systems powered half the smart cities across 3 continents. Yet standing here now, he felt like an intruder in his own life. He moved toward the kitchen, craving coffee and silence when he heard it. A laugh, soft and genuine, floating from somewhere deeper in the apartment. Vincent froze. No one should be awake at this hour. His security system showed no alerts, no breaches. Just the scheduled presence of his housekeeping staff. The discovery following the sound. He found himself drawn to the library, a room he barely used despite its floor-to-ceiling windows and carefully curated collection of first editions. The door stood slightly open, and through the gap, he saw her. Rosalie Chen stood before the antique mirror, wrapped in his charcoal cashmere coat, the one his ex-fiancé had bought him 3 years ago, before she decided that loving a workaholic was less appealing than his bank account suggested. The coat swallowed Rosalie's petite frame, the sleeves hanging past her fingertips, the hem brushing her knees. She held her phone up, video chatting with someone, her face bright with mischief. "I'm telling you. Sis, you should see this place," she said, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who still believed in joy. "Look at this coat. It probably costs more than our entire apartment back home. Don't I look like I belong in one of those luxury magazines?" The voice on the other end laughed, and Rosalie twirled, the coat billowing around her like a cape. For a moment, Vincent forgot to breathe. It had been so long since he had seen anyone move with such unguarded happiness in this space. The apartment had become a museum of his success, beautiful but untouchable. And here was someone dancing in it. She caught sight of something on a shelf and moved closer, still talking. "The books here are real, not for decoration. Can you believe that? Someone actually reads in a place this fancy." Vincent felt something crack inside his chest. Not anger, not indignation, but recognition. He saw in her performance the same longing he carried every day. The desire to be someone else, somewhere else. Living a life that felt less like a sentence. The moment of truth, the floorboard creaked under his weight. Rosalie spun around, her phone slipping from her fingers and landing with a muffled thud on the Persian rug. Color drained from her face as their eyes met in the mirror's reflection. Time seemed to suspend itself, holding them both in a moment neither had planned for. "Mr. Hayes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her hands flew to the coat, fumbling with the buttons. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think you would be home. This is completely unprofessional. I just wanted to feel something different for a minute." She looked terrified, her dark eyes wide, waiting for the inevitable dismissal. Vincent knew what he should do. Any other employer would fire her on the spot, make an example of the breach of trust, maintain the boundary between their worlds. That's what the old Vincent would have done. The one who measured everything in terms of efficiency and control. But standing there, watching her try to shed the coat as if it burned her skin, he felt tired of being that person. Tired of the rules that kept everyone at a distance. Tired of the loneliness that came with never letting anyone close enough to disappoint him. "Keep it on," he said quietly. Rosalie blinked, certain she had misheard. "What? The coat?" Vincent repeated, moving into the room. "It looks better on you than it ever did on me. Actually looks lived in, like it means something." She stood frozen, searching his face for anger or mockery, finding neither. "You're not upset?" He almost smiled. "I walked in on someone trying to feel wealthy for 5 minutes. Trust me, I spend most of my life trying to feel human. You're doing better than I am." The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, though confusion replaced fear. She had expected yelling, expected consequences. Not this strange gentleness from a man known for his ruthless business decisions. "I should explain," she began. "You don't owe me explanations," Vincent interrupted. "But I would like to know who you were talking to. They made you laugh, and this place hasn't heard real laughter in longer than I can remember." Rosalie glanced at her phone, still on the floor. "My sister. She's back in Seattle, working 2 jobs to keep our mom comfortable. I send money when I can, but she worries about me being here alone." "You're not from Chicago?" "No, sir. I moved here 6 months ago. I'm studying architecture at night school. The cleaning job pays better than anything I could find in Seattle, and the hours work with my classes." Vincent filed that away, noting how her eyes brightened when she mentioned it. "You want to build things?" "I want to create spaces where people feel something," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Where walls don't just separate, they embrace. Where light doesn't just illuminate, it transforms." He looked around his library, seeing it suddenly through her eyes. Beautiful, yes, but cold. Perfect, certainly, but lifeless. "This place doesn't do that, does it?" Rosalie bit her lip, clearly torn between honesty and employment. "It's stunning, Mr. Hayes, but it feels like a photograph, not a home." The truth landed softly between them, neither cruel nor kind, just accurate. Vincent nodded slowly. "You're right. I built a showcase, not a sanctuary." She finally removed the coat, folding it carefully over the back of a chair. "I really am sorry about this." "It won't happen again, Rosalie," he said, using her name for the first time. She looked up, surprised. "Thank you. For what?" "For reminding me that things are meant to be felt, not just owned." As she gathered her phone and prepared to leave the room, Vincent found himself not wanting the moment to end. "The tulips in the kitchen yesterday? Those were you?" She nodded. The space looked sad. "Flowers help." After she left, Vincent stood alone in the library, staring at the coat she had worn. For the first time in years, his penthouse felt less like a prison and more like a possibility. He didn't know what would come next, but something had shifted. The silence that followed her departure felt different now, not empty, but expectant, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Outside, the sun climbed higher, painting the city in shades of gold and amber. Vincent watched the light change, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he smiled. The days following their unexpected encounter moved with a rhythm Vincent had never experienced in his carefully controlled life. Rosalie continued her work, but something fundamental had shifted between them. She no longer flinched when he entered a room, and he found himself timing his mornings to coincide with her arrival. She brought changes in whispers. A throw blanket appeared on the leather sofa, soft cream against stark black. Books were rearranged not by size, but by the color of their spines, creating an unexpected rainbow across the shelves. Fresh herbs grew in small pots on the kitchen windowsill, filling the air with the scent of basil and rosemary. Each addition was subtle, but together they began to breathe life into spaces that had forgotten how to live. Vincent found himself noticing details he had overlooked for years. The way morning light pooled on the hardwood floors, creating patterns Rosalie would pause to admire. The sound of her humming while she worked, always the same melody he couldn't quite place. The care she took with his things, treating each object as if it held stories rather than price tags. One evening, he came home to find her standing on a ladder in his office, hanging curtains he had never requested. Sheer fabric in pale gray, softening the harsh edges of the window frames. "I hope this is okay," she said, noticing his presence. "The afternoon sun was making it hard to see your computer screen. I thought these might help without blocking the view." Vincent studied the curtains, then her face. "How did you know about the glare?" She climbed down carefully. "I noticed you squinting when you worked at your desk last week. Light should serve you, not fight you." It was such a simple observation, yet no one in his life had ever noticed his discomfort. His assistant scheduled his meetings, his chef prepared his meals, his driver knew his routes, but none of them saw him. "Not really. You pay attention," he said quietly. Rosalie smiled, folding the ladder. Architecture is about understanding how people move through spaces, what they need even when they don't realize it. You can't design for humans if you don't watch them live. Conversations in the quiet their talks began accidentally, but grew intentional. Vincent started leaving his office door open when she cleaned nearby. She would ask questions about the art on his walls. He would find himself explaining not just what he had bought, but why. She shared stories about her family, about her mother, who had worked 3 jobs to send her to college, about the small apartment in Seattle where 5 people shared 2 bedrooms and somehow still found room for laughter. Why Chicago? He asked one morning over coffee. He had started joining her for a cup before she began her cleaning routine, a habit that felt both strange and necessary. The architecture program here is one of the best, she explained, cradling her mug with both hands. And I needed distance. Not from my family, but from being the person everyone expected me to be. Back home, I was always the responsible one, the caretaker, the one who fixed everything. Here, I can be someone still learning who she is. Vincent understood that more than she knew, running toward something or away from it. Both, maybe. Is that allowed? I think that's called being human. She looked at him with those perceptive eyes that seemed to see past his expensive suits and measured words. What about you, Mr. Hayes? What are you running from? Vincent, he corrected. And I'm not sure anymore. I spent so long building walls, I forgot what I was protecting. Or who you were protecting yourself from, she added softly. The observation struck deeper than she intended. His ex-fiancée had said something similar the night she left, screaming that he loved his company more than her, that he had built a fortress no one could penetrate. He had let her go without fighting, because part of him believed she was right. Loving someone meant being vulnerable. And Vincent Hayes had spent his entire adult life eliminating vulnerabilities. The photograph 3 weeks after the morning in the library. Everything unraveled with a single photograph. Vincent was in a board meeting when his phone buzzed insistently. His assistant's face appeared on the screen, pale and urgent. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway. Sir, we have a situation. Someone posted a photo online. It's trending. His stomach dropped before he even saw the image. When it loaded, time seemed to fracture. There was Rosalie, standing in his library, wearing his coat, the morning sun creating a halo around her silhouette. The photo was beautiful, intimate, and completely damning. The caption read, Billionaire secret morning visitor, Chicago tech giant Vincent Hayes, and mysterious woman? The comments section exploded with speculation. Some called her a gold digger, others his mistress. Many worse things. Within an hour, her name had been discovered. Her Instagram account flooded with messages ranging from envious to vicious. Someone had connected her to his household staff. In the narrative wrote itself. Vincent's PR team assembled within the hour, their faces grim. We need to get ahead of this, his communications director said. Deny any personal relationship. Say she was an employee who overstepped boundaries and has been terminated. Clean, simple, protects the company's image. No, Vincent said. It's Vincent, the stock already dropped 2 points. Investors are nervous. Your reputation as a serious businessman is being questioned. We need to control this narrative, said No. We're not throwing her to the wolves to save my image. His lawyer leaned forward. Then what do you suggest? Because right now, the story is spinning out of control, and she's being torn apart online. Vincent stood, his decision crystallizing. I'll handle it. My way. He left the office and drove straight to his penthouse, where he found Rosalie packing her belongings into a small suitcase. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking as she folded her few possessions. I'm so sorry, she said when she saw him. I never meant for this to happen. That photo was from a private account just for my sister. Someone must have saved it and shared it. The things they're saying about me, about you, I never wanted to cause you trouble. This isn't your fault, Vincent said firmly.
Ow.
But it is. I was careless. I thought I could have one moment of pretending, and now look what happened. Your company, your reputation, everything you built is being questioned because of me. She zipped her suitcase with finality. I'm leaving. Not because you asked, but because staying will only make it worse. They'll keep digging, keep speculating, and you'll keep losing. I won't be the reason your life falls apart. Vincent wanted to argue, to tell her that none of it mattered, but the words stuck in his throat. Because it did matter. His company employed thousands of people. His innovations powered critical infrastructure. His responsibilities extended far beyond his own desires. "Where will you go?" he asked instead. "I have a friend in Milwaukee. I can finish my degree there, start over somewhere the cameras aren't watching. Rosalie." He stepped closer, and for the first time, allowed himself to really see her. Not as his employee, not as the woman who had brought warmth to his cold spaces, but as someone who had become essential to his breathing. "I don't want you to go." She looked up at him, tears finally spilling over. "I don't want to go either. But sometimes wanting isn't enough, is it?" The question hung between them, unanswerable and heartbreaking. She picked up her suitcase and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back one last time. "For what it's worth, these were the best weeks I've had in a long time. You made me feel seen, Vincent. Not many people do that." The door closed softly behind her, and the sound echoed through the penthouse like a wound. The aftermath apartment returned to its previous state. Within days, the throw blankets disappeared, the herbs withered, the curtains came down. Vincent's housekeeper resumed the standard cleaning protocol, efficient and invisible. Everything looked exactly as it had before Rosalie arrived, but Vincent felt the absence in every corner. His coffee tasted wrong. The light hurt his eyes. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore, just empty. His board was satisfied with the official statement. It's vague enough to avoid scandal, firm enough to establish boundaries. The stock recovered. Business continued. Vincent Hayes, the brilliant but emotionally distant tech mogul, remained intact, except he didn't feel intact. He felt fractured. Late one night, unable to sleep, he found himself in the library where it had all begun. The coat still hung where Rosalie had left it, and without thinking, he pressed it to his face. It smelled faintly of her perfume, something light and citrus-based, completely at odds with the heavy designer scents his ex-fiancée had favored. He thought about his mother, who had died when he was 16. She had been an artist, someone who saw beauty in broken things. His father had remarried quickly, choosing a woman who preferred order to creativity, silence to laughter. Vincent had learned early that feelings were inconvenient, that success meant sacrifice. That walls kept you safe. But Rosalie had slipped through his walls without even trying. And now he was left defending an empire that suddenly felt meaningless. The question she had asked echoed in his mind. Sometimes wanting isn't enough, is it? He had spent his whole life believing that. Wanting didn't build companies. Wanting didn't earn respect. Wanting was weakness. But as he sat alone in his perfect, lifeless apartment, Vincent began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had been wrong. Vincent spent the following weeks moving through his life like a ghost in expensive clothing. Board meetings blurred together, product launches felt hollow, and the congratulations for yet another successful quarter rang empty in his ears. His assistant noticed his distraction. His colleagues commented on his unusual quietness, but no one asked what was wrong. That was the unspoken rule of his world. Success covered all wounds. He tried to focus on work, throwing himself into a new project, developing AI systems for sustainable urban planning. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was designing technology to help people live better lives, while his own felt increasingly unbearable. Late one night, while reviewing architectural proposals for a smart city initiative, he stopped at a rendering that took his breath away. The design incorporated natural light in ways he had never considered, creating spaces that felt alive rather than merely functional. The designer's name was listed at the bottom, and Vincent found himself researching her background, reading her philosophy about buildings serving human emotion rather than just human function. It sounded exactly like something Rosalie would say. That's when he understood. He couldn't keep living in a world he had built to avoid feeling. The walls that protected him also imprisoned him. He was tired of being safe and miserable. The next morning, Vincent called an emergency board meeting. His directors assembled in the glass conference room, expecting another strategic pivot or acquisition announcement. Instead, he handed them his resignation, effective immediately. I'm stepping down as CEO. My shares will be transferred to a trust that ensures the company's continued innovation while I pursue other interests. The succession plan we developed last year remains in place. The room erupted in protests and questions, but Vincent remained calm. For the first time in years, he felt certain about something. This isn't impulsive, he continued. I built this company to prove I could, to show that I mattered, to fill a void I didn't know how to face. But I've learned that you can be successful and still be lost. I'm choosing to find my way back. His CFO, a woman who had been with him since the beginning, studied his face carefully. This is about more than business, isn't it? Vincent met her eyes. It's about remembering what business was supposed to serve. And right now, I need to serve something I've neglected too long. Yourself. She asked. My humanity. The search finding Rosalie proved harder than anticipated. She had deleted her social media accounts, and her phone number was disconnected. The friend in Milwaukee turned out to be a lead that went nowhere. It was as if she had intentionally disappeared. Erasing herself from the digital world, Vincent navigated so easily. He tried conventional methods first, hiring a private investigator who came back empty-handed. Rosalie Chen had essentially vanished from public records after leaving Chicago. No employment history, no new address, nothing. Frustrated but not defeated, Vincent tried a different approach. He remembered she had mentioned finishing her architecture degree. So he contacted programs in the Midwest, asking about scholarship recipients or recent enrollments. Most schools cited privacy policies. But one administrator in Madison mentioned a talented student who had submitted a stunning portfolio focusing on emotional architecture. I can't give you contact information, the woman said, but I can tell you she's not enrolled here. Her portfolio was so good we offered her a full scholarship, but she turned it down. Said she found something better in Minneapolis. Minneapolis. It was a start. Vincent drove north, something he would have considered impossible 6 months ago. The CEO of a major tech company didn't personally chase down leads, but he wasn't that person anymore. He was just a man looking for the woman who had shown him how to feel again, the calf discovery. Found her on a Tuesday morning in a neighborhood cafe called the Copper Bean, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. The cafe was small and warm, with mismatched furniture and local art covering the walls, completely unlike the sterile corporate environments Vincent had inhabited for years. Rosalie stood behind the counter, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a cream-colored apron over jeans and a soft blue sweater. She was laughing at something a customer said. That same genuine warmth he remembered, and Vincent's heart clenched at the sight. He almost turned around. What right did he have to disrupt the peace she had found? She had rebuilt her life, moved on, created a space where she clearly belonged. But then she glanced toward the door and their eyes met. Her smile faded, replaced by shock, then something more complicated. She said something to her coworker and came around the counter, stopping a few feet away from him. Vincent, she said softly. What are you doing here? Looking for you. Can we talk? She glanced back at the cafe, clearly torn. I'm working. Just 5 minutes. Rosalie studied his face, and whatever she saw there made her decision. She nodded toward a corner table. I have a break in 10 minutes. Order something and wait. Vincent ordered coffee he didn't want and sat by the window, watching her work. She moved with easy grace, remembering orders, chatting with regulars, wiping down tables between customers. This was her element, surrounded by people and warmth, creating small moments of connection. He had never seen her more beautiful. When she finally joined him, sliding into the chair across from his, the silence stretched between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. You look different, she said finally. Less tired. I quit. Left the company, gave up the penthouse, everything. Her eyes widened. Why would you do that? Because I realized I was living a life designed to avoid living. The success, the isolation, the control, it was all armor against feeling anything real. And then you showed up and cracked it all open, and I couldn't go back to pretending. Rosalie wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, a defensive gesture he recognized. Vincent, what happened between us was a moment, a connection, but it doesn't change the reality. We come from different worlds. The photograph proved that. People will always judge, always assume the worst. Let them, he said simply. I'm done living for other people's opinions. I spent my whole life building an image, and it almost cost me the first real thing I've felt in years. Real thing? She echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent leaned forward, finally brave enough to speak his truth. You, us, whatever this is that made me drive 6 hours to find you, that made me walk away from everything I built. That keeps me awake at night wondering if you ever think about those mornings we shared coffee and actually talked. Tears welled in her eyes. Of course I think about it. I think about it all the time. But thinking and doing are different things. You gave up your company, Vincent. What happens when you regret that? When you realize I'm not worth what you sacrificed? That's not how this works, he said gently. I didn't sacrifice anything. I chose something better. I chose the possibility of being happy over the guarantee of being successful. Those aren't the same thing, and it took losing you to understand that. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm scared. The last time we tried this, I got torn apart online. People said horrible things, made assumptions about who I was and what I wanted. What if it happens again? Then we face it together, Vincent said. Not as employer and employee, not as billionaire and maid. Just as two people trying to build something honest in a world that prefers pretense. Rosalie looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing his words against her fears. Finally, she asked the question that mattered most. What do you want from me, Vincent? Everything, he admitted. Your mornings, your laughter, your perspective on light and space, and what makes a place feel like home. I want to know what you're studying, what you dream about, what makes you happy. I want to be the person who gets to see you, really see you, not as someone serving coffee or cleaning houses, but as the brilliant, creative, warm human being you are. A tear slipped down her cheek. That's a lot to ask. I know. And I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm just asking for a chance. Let me take you to dinner. Let me show you who I am when I'm not hiding behind corporate walls. Give me the opportunity to prove that what I feel isn't about loneliness or nostalgia, but about you. Rosalie stood abruptly, and for a terrible moment Vincent thought she was going to walk away. Instead, she held out her hand. I finish my shift in 2 hours. There's a park 3 blocks from here with a view of the lake. Meet me there, and we'll talk. Really talk. About everything we're afraid of, and everything we hope for. And then we'll decide together what comes next. Vincent took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against his, and smiled. I'll be there. The beginning of the park was exactly as she described, a small green space where the city met the water. Vincent arrived early, watching families play, couples walk hand in hand, dogs chase frisbees through the grass, life happening in small, unremarkable, beautiful ways. When Rosalie appeared, she had changed into a simple dress the color of twilight. She carried her shoes in one hand, preferring to walk barefoot through the grass. And Vincent remembered the painting he had seen of her in Texas. Standing in the rain with her face turned toward the light, they walked together along the water's edge. And this time, the conversation flowed without barriers. She told him about her architecture studies, about a project she was designing focused on community centers that fostered connection rather than just providing space. He told her about his mother's love of art, about the sketches he used to make before business consumed him, about the emptiness he had mistaken for success as the sun began to set. Painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, they sat on a bench overlooking the lake. Rosalie leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust that meant more than any words. I'm still scared, she admitted quietly. Me too, Vincent said. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. She lifted her head to look at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. Promise me something. Promise that if this gets hard, if the world comes at us again, we talk about it. We don't run, we don't hide, we face it together. Promise, he said. And I promise to see you every day, exactly as you are. Not who you think you should be, not who others expect, Just you. Rosalie smiled, that radiant expression that had first broken through his defenses. Then, I think we have a chance. She kissed him then, soft and certain, a beginning wrapped in sunset and possibility. When they pulled apart, Vincent realized something profound. For years he had believed that love required losing yourself, sacrificing who you were for someone else. But this felt different. With Rosalie, he wasn't losing himself. He was finding the parts of himself he had hidden away. The artist, the dreamer, the man who could feel deeply and survive it. What happens now? She asked. Vincent looked at the city skyline in the distance, then back at her face. We build something new. Not a company or an empire, just a life, together. I like the sound of that, she said. They stayed until the stars appeared, talking and dreaming and planning. Two people from different worlds choosing to create a shared one, built on honesty, creativity, and the courage to be vulnerable. Later, as Vincent walked Rosalie back to her apartment, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. The loneliness, the loss, the unexpected morning when a young woman in his coat had reminded him what joy looked like. All of it had led to this moment, to her hand in his, to the possibility of a future he couldn't predict but finally wanted to live. Thank you, he said as they reached her door. For what? For wearing my coat? For bringing flowers into dark spaces? For showing me that the best things in life don't come from building walls, but from having the courage to tear them down. Rosalie squeezed his hand. Thank you for seeing me. For choosing truth over image. For being brave enough to change. As Vincent drove back to his modest hotel room that night, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the calculated optimism of business projections, but the genuine human hope that comes from connecting with another soul. He had walked away from billions to find this feeling, and he would make the same choice 1,000 times over. Because in the end, Rosalie was right. Sometimes wanting isn't enough. Sometimes you have to risk everything, strip away the armor, and stand vulnerable in the possibility of love. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that vulnerability becomes the foundation of something beautiful.